Este é o Dr. André Luiz.
Seja muito bem-vindo. Há muitos anos, nós conseguimos reencarnar um grupo aqui da cidade. A nossa missão é ajudar esses irmãos e instaurar um ambiente de intercâmbio espiritual. Quantas e quantas vidas nós já vivemos? O que é realmente importante agora?
O que vale mesmo é amar.
Cadê o amar, amar, amar? Nada mais importa.
Fato é que a próxima vida é sempre a mais importante de toda a nossa história.
Rapaz, eu vou te fazer um médium dos bons.
É assim que se demonstra o verdadeiro valor da fé. Essa mulher embora, mãe.
Contenham-se, senhores. Estamos falando de uma mulher grávida.
Você tem tudo a ver com a morte dele. Você tem tudo a ver com a minha morte.
Sou o seu anjo da guarda. A gente ama você do jeito que é.
Deus do céu.
Te aceitamos. Venha comigo. Alguma dúvida?
Tô mais do que pronto, mensageiro.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, the Spiritist Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm very happy to be here to host this talk by Marcos DICLEI, who will be leading our live with the theme Decalogue of Good Cheer, based on the book Courage by Andre Luiz and Chico Xavier. I would like to take a brief moment to announce two Spiritist Federation programs. The first is the Initiation into Spiritism virtual course, which is free of charge. This course is meant for those who want to learn or review the basic principles of Spiritism, first published by Allan Kardec in 1857. It is a self-paced class composed of 30 lessons and 8 interactive question and answer sessions. These lessons are released weekly on Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are interested or know someone who could benefit from this course, please take a moment to visit the course page on the United States Spiritist Federation website to access past classes and or receive reminders by email. The second program is the United States Spiritist Federation's 25th anniversary, to be celebrated at the 16th U.S. Spiritist Symposium in Houston, Texas on November 5th, 2022, this year. The 16th U.S. Spiritist Symposium will have the theme Time for Renewal, Healing, and Regrowth. The symposium, held annually, is a full-day event, and it is an opportunity to unite all of us who are interested in Spiritism in a series of presentations and roundtables with speakers from all over the United States. After 2 years of virtual presentations, the symposium will be held in person and will offer activities for children and youth with a focus on emotional healing to address the impact of the pandemic on their families and social lives. Registration is open at the USSF website and the symposium website, spiritistsymposium.org. Join us on November 5th in Houston, Texas at Rice University. And one more announcement before we move on to the presentation. On the screen, please note there is a QR code. If you enjoy this series of live talks and the Initiation into Spiritism course, and would like to read more about Spiritism, The USSF has continuously been working on translations of Spiritist books into English. Thank you for scanning the QR code on screen to help produce future publications and promote Spiritism to everyone. Now, back to our speaker, Marcos DICLEI. We are delighted to have you with us today, sir. And together, everyone who is watching this broadcast and I want to give you a very warm welcome. It is so good to have you here to discuss the Decalogue of Good Cheer. We may find ourselves overwhelmed among the challenges faced in our daily lives. With that in mind, Andre Luis and Chico Xavier bring us fraternal recommendations for helping us overcome the challenges depicted in 10 different scenarios. I'm sure you are as eager as I am to hear from Marcos DICLEI, and before he starts to enlighten us in the next hour, please allow me to formally introduce him. Marcos is a member of the Conscious Living Spiritist group based in Miami, Florida. He's been an apprentice and volunteer in the field of Spiritist education for children and youth in Brazil and Canada, and in recent years, the US. Marcos lives in the Fort Lauderdale area with his wife, Michelle, and daughters, Livia and Amanda. Please take this opportunity to send your questions during the presentation using the chat window. Marcos has reserved time to address your comments and questions once he concludes his presentations. Now, Marcos DICLEI.
Bradley, thank you so much. Virtual hugs to you, my friend. It's great to be here with you. Thank you to you and all the U.S. Spirits Federation for the kind invitation to share our humble reflections around the topic. I would like to also wish good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, whenever you are around the world. May your families, yourselves, are in good spirits, whenever you are at the moment. This reflection was something that, as very often, we speakers, right, when we are delivering a lecture, it's something that it's always close to us, right? Or because we choose the topic, or because the topic was chosen for us, it comes in a moment where we need it the most. And I share with you all that personally, this was a message that came to me, a lesson, as you said, well, Bradley, from the book Courage, that came to me in a very good moment. And I certainly dedicate some time to reflect, and I would like to share with everyone today. I feel that it's particularly important because there's a misconception from many about Christianity and Spiritism, as if they were doctrines of suffering and sadness, because we are, very often talking about the challenges and trials and expiations of life. And that is a big misconception, because the message that Jesus brought to us, that the Spiritism brings to us, which are the same, are a message of hope, right? Are a message of joy. And the meaning of the word gospel is actually good news. So it cannot be a message of suffering and sadness and as if, it reminds us of the gospel according to Spiritism on the ascetics idea of destroying, obliterating, causing suffering to our bodies to perfection, right? Or to the spirit. No, what Christianity and Spiritism teaches is that we need to take care of ourselves. We need to love ourselves, our body and ourselves as immortal spirits. So that's the first thing, we need to remind ourselves. And with that said, in the words of Emmanuel, the gospel or spiritism brings the joy of spirituality to the shadows of earth. And that's a reality check for us, right? That life on earth is difficult. It's challenging. After all, we are in a planet of trials and expiations, right? Therefore, Jesus was very clear. He didn't sugarcoat the message, right? As one example in John, in the book of John, chapter 16, verse 33, he said, in this world, you will have trouble. And he said that in a moment that he was preparing the disciples, right? The 12 to be prepared for what's about to come. He was about to be in prison and start his martyrdom. So he was preparing them, saying this world will have trouble. However, he didn't let them without hope. He said, but take heart, have good cheer, cheer up. I have overcome the world. And he said that in a moment where in the eyes of many, or even nowadays for many, he was a loser. He was a criminal. He was someone who was in prison and murdered. So how could be someone who overcome the world and end his chapter here among us as a winner? Obviously, we need to understand this not with the material eyes, but with the eyes of the immortal spirit, right? He overcome all the trials of the world and accomplished his mission, which was to teach us, to give us the examples of how to live on earth while being immortal spirits, while not being from earth, right? So this is the core of the message, right? Take heart, cheer up. And he, if we also remind ourselves of the book of Matthew, chapter 5, when Jesus delivers the Sermon on the Mount with the Beatitudes, right? And he reinforced that message multiple times when he said, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are those who are persecuted for in the name of righteousness, and so forth and so on, right? I think that was a beautiful message to those excluded, forgotten from the society, to the sick, to the poor, to the humiliated, to those facing discrimination. And it was very relevant at that time, and it is very relevant nowadays, and it will always be relevant because it is a universal code, part of the laws that govern our universe. It's not something temporary. So that was a very positive message to all of us. But with our daily lives, as Bradley was reading at the beginning of the introduction, right? With the challenges, we tend to forget. And in the book of Courage, André Luiz and Chico Xavier really lived a life giving us examples as well, very close to the examples that Jesus told us. They leave us 10 concrete recommendations, therefore the Decalogue of good cheer, right? 10 concrete recommendations, very simple and direct, to overcome many of the troubles that we face in our day-to-days, especially now after the pandemic, right? With all the challenges that many are facing, and every single one of us have our challenges in our homes. I feel that's an appropriate message. Now, the perspective of the message that we're going to see in a moment are obviously with the perspective of where we are at the receiving end of those troubles and challenges and difficulties. We are the receiving end. We can always flip the coin and see that in many cases, we may be the source of those challenges and troubles to others. And that's a very valid reflection. But for today, because the focus is to help us to, find a way to deal with some of our challenges, the focus is on us at the receiving end of those challenges. I'm going to keep that honest. I keep that in perspective for all of us. I would love to hear your comments, maybe on the chat or questions at the very end. And if you're like me, we want to bite more than what we can chew, right? And 10 things are a lot to commit. And in normal circumstances, I would commit, I'm going to do all the 10. So maybe we'll do a little joint activity here. Maybe we call it pick one or pick two, right? As we go through these discussions, analyze, evaluate what speaks close to each of you, right? To each of us. And let maybe pick one or two that we feel that we should be focusing in today and in the upcoming days to help us to overcome our own challenges. Okay, so let's get started. I hope you are all in sync and remain connected with these reflections, and also share your thoughts along the way so you don't sleep with my voice. And here's the first of the 10, and it's quite generic and broad, right? He's talking about difficulties. So the question is, are you experiencing difficulties? Do not waste time with lamentations. Work. Very simple, indirect. And we may even think, that's obvious. But it's not obvious when we are in the heat of the moment, right? So I like this one because sometimes we are so overwhelmed that we cannot even define what we are feeling, what's happening. There's so many things. But the core message is about not focusing on lamentations, but really directing our mind and our energy to move out of that and do something about it, right? It's action to move forward. And sometimes, those difficulties, we keep asking ourselves, why me? Why this is happening with me? There's so many things at the same time. We try to live a decent life, and as an honest person, and those things keep coming, and we revolt and rebel. And it's important, going back to what we just discussed on the message of the Sermon on the Mount. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 5, the blessed are the afflicted. There is a segment where the benefactor spirits talk about causes of afflictions. And most often than not, if we are able to pause and reflect on what's happening with us, most often than not, the causes of those afflictions are what we have been doing now, on how we live our life, our habits, on how we are taking care of our health, or how we have been communicating with our family members, or how we have been conducting ourselves in the professional setting with our colleagues. It's most often than not have a root into present actions. However, there are sometimes we can find explanations, and we learn about afflictions which will have a cause in previous existence, and sometimes we see examples of people who live a very healthy life and they do everything to have a healthy life, and then they still are experiencing difficult illnesses. So where is that coming from, right? So those afflictions are part of our life, and the message is about doing something about it. But why do we suffer? Why God allows us to have that suffering? And we need to reflect also on the Spirit's book, question 132, about the purpose of the incarnation. Allan Kardec asked the spirits, what's the purpose of the incarnation of the spirits? And the benefactor spirits answered, 2, God imposes incarnation for the purposes of leading the spirits to perfection, to improve ourselves. And that's how we learn, considering our imperfect condition, right? Through trials and vicissitudes in the corporeal life. And the second, as we go through our vicissitudes or trials, the other objective is to collaborate with God in the creation, is help those that are sharing the journey with us, right? Our family members, our neighbors, our colleagues, our co-workers, and etc. So those difficulties are here to teach us and to help us to progress. So let's reflect on them, but most important, let's work to overcome them. So that was the first. The second is criticism. Are we facing criticism, receiving criticisms? Never be upset by them. Make the most of those that are useful. And this is always a difficult for some more than for all others. And we do remember a little anecdote from Chico Xavier, when at the end of the meetings in the Spiritist group that Chico presided the meetings, very often people would come talk to him. And once someone came to him really with a heavy heart because of criticism. And, you know, they were explaining to Chico how difficult that was and how tired and sad they were for the criticism. And Chico asked, is that criticism true? And the person said, no, Chico, you know, that's really not true. So why are you upset? It's not true. Let it go. Never mind. Don't bother. However, if it's true, take it as a positive opportunity to drive change and improve yourself and make that change, right? Again, driving the action, getting something useful out of it. So if there is criticism coming your way, reflect. If there is something to be done, make the most of those that are true. If they are not true, let go. And why do we hurt with those that are not even true? And I used to do more than what I do today with journaling. And I remember an occasion where I received a criticism that had no basis in reality at all, but it made me very upset. And journaling about it, I kept asking myself questions. And at the very end, it came the question, why I'm so upset? What's the reason? Pride. Right? Pride, because we don't like people to point fingers on us. We don't like to make mistakes. We don't like to be wrong. That was a big lesson. That's the lesson. Let's practice humility. Let it go. Right? So that's a big one. And, you know, evaluate if that's one of your pick two. There you go. And I will move on. I'm watching the clock. Number 3, incomprehensions. Do not try to make them greater through your demands and complaints. Make your journey easier. And that's also a difficult one when people don't understand us, right? Then we are not comprehended. And one occasion that we remember well is when we discover something that we feel is changing your diet or a new, philosophy or religion that we discover, and all of a sudden we want our family to follow along with the habits because it's so great. They need to come along, and we talk to them about it, and they have no interest, right? And we feel very frustrated and upset and not understood, right? They don't understand. They don't support us. That's a cause of frustration, and that makes us remember that every individual have their free will, their choices, their moment to wake up for certain things. It's like the Spiritism or Christianity. It's not for everyone, right? It's the right time for, you know, each individual. And that was like that for us in the past. And if we are with this awareness, our position is to understand the others and wait for the time when others will understand us. Make our journey easier, right? Because complaining demands will only harm our relationships. As Jesus, you know, left us with the golden rule: do unto others what would like to do unto us. Let's accept the others as they are, and, you know, hope that in turn they will accept us as we are. Or we can remind ourselves of Francis of Assisi: "Oh, Divine Master, help us, grant that I may not so much seek to be understood as to understand others." And that's a lesson for us to make our journey easier and less heavy, just letting that go. With that, we'll move forward. Number 4. And I'm checking a comment here from Paula. Oh, there's a question. We'll reserve that question for later. Paula, thank you for your patience there. Intrigues. Do not give them shelter. Cast enlightenment through your charitable behavior. And it's very common that, you know, here and there, people will come to us and they are talking about someone else. We don't know if it's true or false. Sometimes we buy a false information and it's spread, and we cause, you know, harm. And we can't help but think about another anecdote from Chico Xavier. And that's, I think, in one of the books from Adelino da Silveira, who was one of his friends from Brazil. And he described it in multiple occasions, people coming to Chico with, you know, news about other people, talking behind the back from other people to Chico. "Oh, Chico, you should see, you know, what Bradley did yesterday. He did this, this, this. He is like that, that, that." And Chico, with his patience, he would just listen until the person was done. And he would flip the coin and say, "Yeah, you know, I hear you. You know, Bradley, you know, he puts a lot of effort in what he does. You know, he wakes up in Saturday morning, you know, and is there to open up the streaming. He's always receive everyone with a smile." So Chico always give a spin that, hey, no matter how bad we feel someone is, they have a spark of goodness in them, because we are creatures of God. And it's hard for us to see sometimes, right? But that's very true. That's the charitable behavior here. Cast light, cast enlightenment through the charitable behavior. And, you know, today that person is coming, talking about us. Tomorrow, she may be talking about us to someone. So good lesson to stop that evil, that inferior conversation, and not to spread around, right? Sometimes, if it's a positive critic, then it's not really an intrigue, right? Let's separate things. Intrigue has, you know, very often some ill intention or not very actionable intention or results. So that's the lesson from this particular item in the Decalogue. And, you know, before I move on, the main reflection for us here, at least for myself, is we are all in the same boat. We are all in the same boat with virtues and vices, and we're just different. That's the lesson that Chico was trying to pass to everyone and to us. Halfway through the journey here, let's talk about persecutions. Never pay them back. Forgive and forget. And this may be one of the most difficult things for us, right? Is to be able to forgive. Something that Jesus was the pioneer. If you remember, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. That was the the law before him, and he brought the message of forgiveness, right? The message of love, that God is love, and we always have a new opportunity. So it's a big responsibility for us as we understand these lessons to be able to put them in practice. And it's hard when, we are persecuted sometimes at work, in our volunteer, opportunities and jobs, or even within the family. The number one thing is don't pay it back, right? If we are persecuted, most often than not, the individuals at the source of that are not well, are also learners, are also imperfect, and we should follow the examples of Jesus, right? We can think of a better example than Jesus and the amount of persecutions that he suffered until the end, and he never paid back. He was always praying and forgiving on the spot, immediately. We remember the passage where he was on the cross, among other individuals being crucified, criminals in that case, and he was praying for them and praying for all of us who caused that suffering. So, big lesson. This could be a whole lecture, a series of lectures, but we will leave at that for the moment. Slander, number 6. Never infuriate yourself when evil attacks. When evil attacks, always serve. Again, always ending with keep moving forward. Right? We are here for a job of improving yourselves, helping others. Let's make sure, nothing distract us. And slander, we could say defamation, as a more familiar word, by definition is false. It's a false defamation, and we can leverage the same framework from Chico for criticism, right? Is it true? Do something about it. It's not? Why bother? Oh, but it hurts. It hurts. Why? Pride, right? And pride and selfishness are the big wounds of humanity. That's why we are here in this planet, to attack and heal that wound. So let's make sure we work on this. And I know it is difficult. It's very difficult. But praying, asking for help, journaling, there are several things we can do, right? Talking to a friend. And at the end, we have a little framework that we'll share. Sometimes meditation really helps us to focus our minds. And when we receive, those things, we are less reactive. But the message is clear, right? Let's keep doing what we have to do. And an important reminder that I speak for myself as a spiritist, I should know better, but we tend to forget. Behind a friend, a co-worker, a family member, or even someone that we may not know, that may be the cause of defamation. Sometimes behind them, we find an inferior discarnate spirit who is trying to attack us, right? To take us off rails, off track from what we are supposed to do. But we tend to forget, right? So sometimes when we look at someone, we may say, is this coming from this person? Or this person is just an instrument. That's why, a prayer always help. And we're not going to, in front of that person, obviously do a prayer. That's not what we meant, but mentally, connect on something positive, and in the silence of our homes, in the privacy of our homes, work on that. Okay, let's move forward to the item number 7. sadness. Avoid any disposition towards discouragement. Pray embracing your own duties. And I will share something personal here. If I have to pick one here, that would be for me, right? With so many things that happen, this is one that I'm personally putting focus on. Before anything, we need to remind ourselves that no one is happy every day and fully energized every day. We all have our days, right? We all get sad here and there. And I always remember a little simple analogy, maybe silly, but it works for me. An electrocardiogram, right? That goes up and down, up and down. If you ever went to the doctor to measure your heartbeats, it's always up and down. If it's up and down, it's good. We are alive, right? So if we are sad here and there, it's normal. We are humans, so we are happy, we are sad. However, the danger is when that sadness install ourselves and build a little nest in our heads or in our hearts. Analogy of the electrocardiogram, it becomes a line. That's no good, right? That is when depression, that's when the discouragement that we see here on the screen, right? Dispositions toward discouragement, thoughts of, abandoning our duties, abandoning their job or volunteer experiences. If you are a facilitator for the kids and youth, oh my goodness, sometimes we're feeling discouraged. It's hard. It's a tough job. But that's a danger if we let that make home in our minds and our hearts, right? So a big lesson here for us is to think about the most powerful Wi-Fi that we have in the world, better than the Tesla Starlinks. This Wi-Fi works underwater, works in a cave. If you are in the desert, works in the desert. If you go to the moon, to Mars, it works there too. It's our mind. It's the mediumship, right? This inherited gift that we have, that we connect with everyone through our mental waves. And I remember, I believe is in the book, in the mechanics of mediumship, when André Luiz talk about our mental waves, right? He describes that our thoughts are energy, and through science we know that energy is matter. And he describes the mental images, right? But he talks about the fact that our mental waves travel in a closed system. And I was scared when I read this, right? Our mental waves travel in a closed system, which means they go and they come back to us like a boomerang, right? But if our energy or mental waves are negative, right, these thoughts of sadness, if you're nurturing these thoughts of sadness for a longer period of time, they're traveling around and connecting with everyone that has share the same negative and depressive thoughts. And those came back to us. It's like a snowball effect. So you can imagine the impact of those coming back to us. And all of a sudden we are in a downward spiral. And that's when, depression and cases of spiritual obsessions, that's very serious, right? So we need to be vigilant. And at the same time, if we, again, flip the coin, if we nurture positive thoughts, that's a comfort, right? These positive thoughts will travel around and connect with people who are also nurturing thoughts of, hope and encouragement and joy. And this comes back to us and we start an upward spiral journey, right? So it's very important that as we take a shower every day and brush our teeth, we also do a little bit of hygiene in our thoughts, in our mind. So big lesson for us here. And if we feel we are in this situation, we need to ask for help. The Spiritist centers, a prayer, or calling to a friend, and sometimes we need to go to the doctor, right? A psychologist, a psychiatrist. And I think the pandemic really broke a lot of paradigms for many of us, that mental health is very critical, very important as physical health, as spiritual health, right? So big lesson here. Again, remind our little activity here, your pick one or pick two. So we'll move on to the number 8 about these illusions. So we were just talking about the dangers of negative thoughts, and sometimes the depressive states made us getting into the illusion of how to end those troubles, right? So think about illusions. I'm just connecting here with these illusions, which by definition is when we become disappointed in someone or in something, because they are not as good, as perfect as we thought, as we had believed. So are we experiencing these illusions? Why blame others for our mistakes? Move forward, giving the world and life your best. Again, the same message, right? Move forward. Don't get stuck here. Don't cling on blames for our mistakes. It took me a minute to understand this. Why these illusions points to my mistake, our mistakes, right? Let's remind ourselves, disillusion means I'm disappointed on something or someone when I discover that they are not as good, as perfect as I thought. Our mistake is we are creating unrealistic expectations. Oh, I watched a lecture from that old man, Marcus DICLEI, there on the internet, and then I spoke with his wife, and you know what, he doesn't do all those 10 things over there, so very disappointed. I'm disillusioned. Well, that's, dear friends, that's the wrong expectations, because none of us are perfect, right? Oh, the president of the Spiritist Center, the priest of that church, he treated so-and-so like this. Well, they are not perfect. Well, but they are the president and the priests. None of us are perfect, right? So that's why blame others for our mistakes? It's our mistake to expect perfection from each other on earth. Now, here is how to avoid this disillusioned state. Pointing yourselves to the Spirit's book, question 625. What is the perfect standard that God has offered to humankind, to us, as a guide and model? And the benefactor spirits answer this question from Allan Kardec. Look at Jesus. So expect perfection and happiness from material things. It's not going to happen, right? They are not the source or the destination. Expecting perfection from others also is not going to happen. Jesus is the model. Jesus is the perfection that we'll get to achieve one day, far in the future. So if you want to have someone as an idol, as we often say, oh, that rock star or that soccer player, no. They have their flaws, right? If we are looking for a solid model to follow, that's Jesus. That's why, we need to lower our expectations with our family members, with our co-workers, with the friends from the Spiritist movement, and so and so. That's a big lesson for me. I hope you also evaluate and check if that's part of your pick two. Number 9, illnesses. I'm reaching the end here. Illnesses. Avoid irritation and denial. Think about the benefits that the temporary body suffering bring to the eternal soul. So there's quite a bit to unpack here. First of all, it's always difficult and it's easy to say, but when we are living, that's a different story, and we are aware of that, right? Spiritism teach us and give us the tools, but the pain, the challenges are there for everyone. And it's important to put that in perspective. So in times of trials, the illnesses or the difficulties are there not to annihilate us or to destroy or obliterate us. God is not mad at us. It's like the exam at the end of the semester for the student, right? That's the test for everything we have been learning. Again, back to the sources of our afflictions, right? If we have no reason for that, maybe is really that test that has a source on a past existence. Or maybe what we are facing now, it's our body's way of pleading for help. Maybe something that we are doing in this existence. Maybe is our really habits. And I remember Divaldo sharing, Divaldo Franco sharing some of the challenges that he was facing with the heart disease. And he told, when he looked at the mirror and asked himself, why this is happening? Why I'm holding that I need to let go, right? And I think between that dialogue with himself, and Joanna De Angelis, he thought about, someone that he was still upset with, right? Something that he had to forgive and let go. And sometimes the illnesses are here really to give us a message, right? That, hey, it's time to act, time to let go. And we have to pause to listen. We remember that Jesus cured so many, right? If we read the gospel, we are going to see that he cured so many, but he didn't cure others. There are passages where, some approached him and he didn't cure. And why? Because we were not ready. Because the illnesses are here to teach us something. The cure has a root in our spirit. And Dr. Bezerra de Menezes also said, there are no illnesses as we understand. There are the ill of the soul, because the illnesses have a root in ourselves as immortal spirits, in our soul, right? So that's a very important thing to understand, because sometimes we cure the body and we keep the same habit, and that disease will come back again, and it keeps coming back because we are not going to the source. Therefore, maybe one of the learnings for us here is every time that we pray for our health, that we also remember to pray that, we ourselves or our soul, may our soul cures even before our body, because then we cure from a definite, from a permanent state, right? And I'm going to move ahead. I'm watching the time as well. Failures. We all have challenges with failures. So do not believe in defeats. Remember that by the blessing of God, you are now at your best time. Today, wherein you can smile and restart, renew, and serve among vast resources. And if we think about the kids, right? Kids make a mistake and they move on and they want to try again. We, as who are kids for a longer time, we want to get it right first time. We don't want to try again, because then we are scared to embarrass ourselves again. We don't want to fail again. We want to get it right the first time, where again is an unrealistic expectation, right? So do not believe in defeats. And I once saw in a t-shirt from someone on the street the word fail as an acronym for first attempt in learning. And I love that, right? Fail, pick the right letters on the screen. First attempt in learning. That should be your mindset, right? That's the blessing of reincarnation. We make a mistake, we fail, And when the time is right, we have a new opportunity to come back, or we are forgiven and we can, try again to amend and move on with our relationships, with our life. So stand up and dust ourselves. That should be the motto when we fall and make a mistake, and continue to move on, right? There's always an opportunity to restart, to renew, and start again. We can, go back and change the past. That's for sure. That's one thing we got to reconcile in our minds. Take the learning from those failures, and let's continue to move on. And it's interesting to see here the message about vast resources, right? You can restart and smile and serve among vast resources, because we have vast resources around us. We were talking a moment ago about prayer, right? When we pray a sincere prayer, not a mechanical prayer, where we repeat words without really thinking, connecting with God, this spirituality, with Jesus, right? With our protector spirit, or guardian angel. When we pray, it as if we downloaded a tremendous amount of positive energies, right? To recharge ourselves, to give us hope and courage. And we don't do that as often as we could do, right? But that's part of these vast resources at our reach. Jesus said, ask and you'll be given. Seek and you find. And sometimes is a person that is guided to come to us and talk to us and cheer us up, and we are not even aware. Sometimes our guardian angels are there working tirelessly, and we have this support, this help coming to us, and we don't even realize, right? The nature around us, our family members or friends, sometimes a lecture that pops in the phone in a moment that we need. Being alive in itself is a blessed opportunity. So if we put our minds to look at the half full of the glass, we started to realize the amount of blessings that we have at our reach, right? So let's be more like the kids. Keep trying. And that's the end, my friends. And now I would just like to bring it all together. We discussed at the beginning about a little framework. And this is a little framework that is not mine. It's something that I borrow from Dr. Stephen Covey in a book that I really love. It's one of the first books that I read as a teenager and changed my way of thinking. It's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? And all the challenges that we discussed, all the troubles that we discussed that happens with us in every day, we can see this as those events that happen to us, that come to us. More often than not, we just respond and react without thinking. And that's when the disasters happen, right? The relationships just go downhill. We made connections that mentally brought us down. And sometimes, we think that even ending our life or abandoning our family, abandoning our jobs, abandoning our volunteer opportunities is the answer, right? And particularly when we talk about the large amount of kids and youth, adults that are just choosing the door of physical death as a false solution for the problems, it's alarming, and we need to think about this, right? We have to do our best to pause. This is what makes us humans, is our ability to choose, to stop and choose how to respond to those criticism, to those persecutions. And sometimes is a praying and stopping that cycle and connecting to that positive download that help us to disconnect and move on. Sometimes is picking up the phone and calling a friend, or asking for a fraternal conversation at the Spiritist Center, you know, that can save a life, right? So I feel this is very important, and taking those actions before we choose how to respond, or if we respond at all, you know, to that person, to that event, can really be a life changer. So I'll leave you with this thinking. And since we touched upon the challenge of mental health, right? And what Allan Kardec spoke about in the book of Genesis, I think it was chapter 18, when he spoke about the new generation and, you know, the characteristics, the impressive characteristics of the new generation. But he also spoke about the number of suicides among kids and teenagers in the future, which is our present times. We would say it's very important to think about this and say that if we are nurturing this type of thinking, maybe it's a matter of picking up the phone and, you know, here's a tip from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. There is a campaign happening just beginning this coming week. Sometimes it's calling 988 or 911, or if you're in Brazil, 190. Ask for help. We learn through Christianity, through Jesus, through Spiritism, that we don't die. And seeking the end of our troubles through the door of death is the biggest illusion, that we as humanity are still victims. And that's why the message from our beloved Master Jesus is so important, so relevant for us nowadays. Friends, I hope some of these messages can resonate with some of you. And Bradley, I hand it over to you for any questions that we may have.
Thank you so very much, Marco, for the wonderful information and reflections you provided. We are now open for comments and questions from the audience. From Paula Craig, as a spirit in the spirit world, do we really realize how difficult it will be in this earth life when we are planning our next incarnation?
Paula, thanks for the very good question. It reminded me of the book, The Messengers. And it's our story, really. If you haven't read, it's a book from André Luiz, Chico Xavier as well. And it describes the reincarnatory planning process that we all go through. And some of us in the spiritual world, we feel so bold that we say, you know what? I want to reincarnate blind. So take my vision, and maybe give some mobility challenges as well, because, you know, I think I can handle and I deserve. And our mentor or guardian spirits, those who assist us in that process, they will say, you know, Marcos, lower a bit, less. I think if you go with perfect conditions, it's going to be difficult enough. So that's our question. So we have this conversation. Sometimes we think we can handle more than what it is. So Paula, sometimes we don't understand how difficult it is. It's our ability in maturity, spiritual maturity, to appreciate that. But sometimes we can see that there will be circumstances in life, there will be trials, and most often than not, the spirits are always afraid of reincarnating, because the chances of failing are certainly very, very great, right? So I think most of us have an understanding of how difficult it can be, but because of our imperfection, our pride, I think often we think we can handle more than it was proposed. But thank God, the spiritual benefactors who assist and direct that work, they know us, and they will plan the trials that are at our level, right? That's why we heard from the gospel, from the Bible, that God doesn't give us a weight heavier than we can carry, right? If we are here today facing the trials that we are facing, it's because we have what it takes to overcome them. That's the justice of God. So I truly recommend the reading of that book, The Messengers. It is amazing.
Thank you, Marco, for that response. From the TVCEI International Spiritist Council, how can we make our journey easier, but still learn through the harder lessons of life?
Thanks for the question. I think we went through some of that, right? Some of that, those advices. But I remind ourselves of the book of John when he said, well, when Jesus said the following: I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, and he shall have the light of the life. So Jesus is the light. It's like the, what do we call it? The lighthouse, right? Think that we are a little ship in the ocean, in a turbulent ocean. He is the lighthouse, right? We know that he is indicating the safety or the danger of the path through his own life. He left us his examples. And the more we strive to follow his example, the more we make our lives easier. And we went through the conversation, right, on forgiveness, lowering our expectations and accepting others. That is the path. That's why he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? And no one can go to the Father without coming through me, without walking through my footsteps. I think that's how we make our lives easier and at the same time learn. And the last thing I want to say, there are things that are not spiritist prescriptions or Christian prescriptions, but those are things that we learn in life. I'm a firm believer that it makes a tremendous difference. 10 minutes of meditation every day, because it's how we train our brains to pause and decide how to respond to things. Journaling, tremendous thing to help us to reflect about ourselves. Those little things can certainly help. I hope I answered the questions. Happy to answer any follow-up.
Very, very helpful, Marco. Much appreciated. From Yasko Arakawa. Hi, Marcos. Great food for reflection. Regarding our difficulties to take criticisms, even those we know are baseless, is it our pride or lack of confidence in ourselves taking part in our reactions, or both, or more? How to more effectively come to balance on these circumstances?
Yasko, thanks for being connected with us. We met before a long time ago. It's good to hear from you. Thanks for the question. You're absolutely right. I shared a bit of a personal experience, right, with my own journaling, my own reflection, and I came to the conclusion that for my little circumstance, it was pride. But every single was, as we do those reflections, right, for the challenge we face when we are criticized, we will come up with different root causes because we are all different. I feel lack of confidence plays a big role, right? We doubt ourselves too much. I'm also a victim of that. We doubt ourselves so much that any doubt or criticism from someone, we think that, hey, you know what? I think I'm not as good as I think, and that person is right, so I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. so it sparks so many things. I feel you're absolutely right, and each of us will find different answers, right? It opens the door to that imposter syndrome that we all know well, and many of us are victim, right? That we feel we are worse than what we are, that we don't deserve to be with the responsibilities that we have. And in terms of effectively come to balance on those circumstances, I would say there are multiple things that we can do, but getting to know ourselves in keeping ourselves in check, it's very important. I think because we are so imperfect, our natural tendency, I would say for many of us, I can't generalize this, for many of us, we tend to connect to the negative aspects, right? And we tend to forget the great things that we have done, the challenge that we overcome in life, and we tend to focus on the things that we failed. Every single one of us here, I'm very positive that if we reflect in our lives, we are going to see and find so many challenges that we faced, but we overcome, and here we are today, right? And we forget about them. I think when we are on these circumstances of criticism, self-doubt, feeling the worst of the worst, feeling that we really are imposters and we don't deserve to be where we are, I think if we are able to remind ourselves of what we overcome to be where we are today, this is certainly going to help us to, continue to move on, right? But again, it's always important on Chico's little framework. That criticism has some basis. I think the action is the humility to accept and work to improve on that particular area, right? I hope that addressed the question to some extent.
I think it's very helpful and encouraging, Marco. Thank you. From the U.S. Spiritist Federation, we have a question. Do we need to ask for forgiveness of ourselves for having thoughts of persecution or slander before we forgive others?
Oh my goodness, that is so important and so true, right? I think many of us are very hard on ourselves, right? We have a hard time forgiving ourselves, and that's why those downward spiral thoughts are more often than none with us, right? It's very important that we forgive ourselves because the thoughts of persecution, slander, the thoughts of revenge, the criticism, right, are part of our minds. They come and go, and that's who we are. It reminds us of Paul of Tarsus, right? I do the evil or the negative things that I don't want to do, and I don't do the good that I want to do. It's the inner battle of the old self, right? Which the baggage that we bring from past existence, from bad habits, and the transformation and the rebuild that we want to do. This is what we all face, I would say, in this life, because we are all going through this process of rebuild, right? The process of inner transformation, which is really core of the Spiritist doctrine. And it's normal, it's natural. Again, back to the analogy of the electrocardiogram, right?
This might answer your question. Canada's calling code.
I have Alexa here trying to collaborate with the lecture. Forgive me for that. So it's up and down. That's who we are. The important is that when those things come, to us, that we just accept that, hey, we are imperfect, and we choose not to do that, right? That's the ability to choose and stop, because our thoughts will always come. And if we don't hold, and if we don't resist, ended up doing it, too bad, but it happens. We still need to work on that. We still need to forgive ourselves. But then that doesn't suffice. We'll have to amend. We will have to ask for forgiveness. We'll have to do some work to readjust and fix what we may have broken, right? So it's always good to hold back our thoughts, hold back our words and actions. But if we are unable to, we still need to forgive, but then we have work to do to adjust and fix.
Indeed, Marco, indeed. So we have another question from the United States Spiritist Federation. How might we bring encouragement to others who suffer from illness and only see unhappiness in this life?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we really have a tendency, particularly thinking about mental health, right? This was really new to me. I grew up in a small city, in a farmland, I would say, right? And there's no such thing as mental health. We were feeling down, and we would just hear, keep moving forward, forget about that. And I think in general, we have a tendency when we see people feeling down, we just tell them, don't feel like that. Here's the Spiritist book, and take a read and get moving. It will pass. I think it's important that we have empathy, right? That we are there with the person, that we hear, that we demonstrate that we understand, and we help them through our examples more than anything, right? I think words are very easy to drop. What I'm doing here right now is very easy. I think being there with the person, supporting them on what they need, and gradually giving them a way out, very often is recommending them medical assistance, really, right? Sometimes the mental challenges that we face become organic challenges that we don't know, right? It's not because we're spiritists that we can diagnose everything, right, as obsessions. And no, sometimes it's encouraging that person to go to a doctor, to a psychologist, and check what's going on, which may be organic. But in many cases, helping that person to go out, right? When we are feeling negative, we want to be on the sofa, eating compulsively, watching TV. I think it's, hey, let's go for a walk. Let's get some sun. Let's talk. Maybe sometimes, try inviting to go to a Spiritist center. Yeah, why not? Reading a book that gives some uplifting ideas. I think it's a progressive step, but it starts with the empathy, being there, listening, and gradually trying to introduce help. But the first sign of alarm when things are really down is we need to seek the medicine of the man, the humans, right? And also the medicine for the soul. It's a combination that we need to gradually walk. We can't enforce, because that never works, right?
Very true. And thank you very much, Marco, for your reflections, for these good thoughts. We have a thought comment from Paula Craig. Thank you, Marco, for your answer to my question and for a very wonderful lesson. I always learn so much and much to think about.
Thank you, Paula. Full credits to our beloved Chico Xavier and André Luiz, who gave us this beautiful lesson on the book Courage, which is a great book, by the way.
And Yasko Arcaba says, Great answer and very helpful tips.
Thanks, Yasko.
And from Adriana Barbosa, good morning and thank you, Marco, for your time helping us learn.
Thank you, Adriana. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Great questions.
So thank you again, Marco, for your good thoughts, your reflections, and good information. And our thanks to everyone who watched today's Talk Live and those who have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. Next Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, don't miss our next live talk when Luis Vilasa will be discussing the spirit world, part 2. As we are about to end our live today, I would like to remind everyone of the upcoming 16th U.S. Spiritist Symposium, Time for Renewal, Healing, and Regrowth, occurring on November 5th in Houston, Texas. Make sure to register all your family so we can all spend a full day learning more about Spiritism and sharing our life experiences and friendship. Let's all celebrate 25 years of the United States Spiritist Federation together. Don't miss tomorrow, Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for the next class of the Initiation into Spiritism course. Let us know if you have any questions about it. Marco, before we close the live, would you please honor us with a prayer?
It's my honor, Bradley. Thank you. Dear Jesus, our beloved Master and Teacher, thank you for the opportunity that we all have to be living in the present times, applying our efforts and leveraging all the resources available to us to be better and to help each other along the way. Dear Master, you who know well the challenges and the imperfections and the load that we carry in our hearts individually, please help us, Master, to have the strength, the courage, the joy, and the hope that you exemplify to us in your life among us. Please help us to keep moving forward and not abandon our journey, our duties. May your protector spirits and our guardian angels be with us and find a little space, a little entrance door to reach our minds and our hearts in the difficult moments, to inspire us and help us to make the right choices and respond accordingly to the challenges that visit us every day. Please, dear Master, help us and our family members and friends around the world who may be going through so much hardship right now. Those in the hospitals or ill in their homes. Those who may be abandoned on the streets and in prison. Please comfort and give the strength to all of us to not give up. And to those that are at the verge of walk through the door of the illusion of the physical death through suicide, help them all. Help us all to remember the truth that you taught us, that we are immortal spirits, and may we have the humility to step back and ask for help. please help the volunteers and make this channel possible to keep the messages alive and reaching to all of those in need. And with that, we ask your blessings to finish our humble meeting for today. So thank you, and so be it.